Okay, so MBT Book Club, we are looking at Book 1, Chapter 31. So let's, and this Chapter 31 is the birth of space-time and how space was created. Before we dive into it, we will set the intention. Really, we just come together once a week to hold space for each other, to be able to learn more about this material. I remember asking Tom a couple of years ago about our book club because he always reminds me not to get lost in the details. And so I was like, well, I mean, by reading the book, it seems like it's details, right? It's all the little details of nature reality. So is it even worth it? Should we even have a book club? And he said, yeah, of course. As long as what you're doing is you're making it a personal experience and you're not getting stuck in the intellect, but you're really sharing your personal experience with the material. So that's what our group is all about, is bringing into that being level, holding space for each other, not making anyone wrong, but really supporting and encouraging each other along this journey. So yeah, with that, let's do a check-in and see what everybody thought of Chapter 31. Who wants to start?
Well, I'll start. So when I first went through this, I looked to see where I'd highlighted in this chapter before when I've read it. And to be honest, the only place I ever highlighted was the very last sentence of the whole chapter. So I did read it again, and I've highlighted a little bit more, but this really, I mean, the quote I sent the other day, it's like I just had to let go of the details because it was just over my head. And to grasp the big concept of what was going on was all I really needed to get from this. So for me personally, it's just, okay, that's good. Yep. All right. I accept what you say, and I'm just going to continue on.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, thank you, Suzanne, for saying it first. Because I was just telling Vanessa, I did not understand most of it at all. It just went over my head completely. And yeah, I feel completely lost. I mean, there was a few things that I have highlighted, but they're not as meaningful probably as the stuff that we didn't understand. So I'm hoping to get a little bit more clarity with you smart people. Thank you for being here for me.
Guess I'll go next. I felt exactly the same, and there were bits that I was like, okay, if I don't think about it too much, maybe I can deal with it. Like when he says, you know, that AUM and NPMR and PMR all have different rates of time. I was like, okay, like if I don't think about it too much, I can just accept that and move on. So that's kind of, you know, and there were a bunch of stuff I was like, blah, 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 blah. Okay. So, yeah. Yeah.
For me, there's a good portion I understood, but there's a lot of that, like most of you got, like what Sylvie said, blah, 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 blah. And I just said, I read over and over again. No, I'm getting too analytical. Just let it go and go on to the next paragraph.
Donna, what about you?
I'm the nerd.
You loved it.
I loved it. I went through, when I read it the first time, I did what you guys did. You know, like Suzanne, you really started it off with blah, blah, blah. I accepted. Accepted. This time, I haven't been here for a few chapters, and I thought, oh, maybe they're really into it. So what I did, my strategy was take each sentence. So I did. So,
Whoa.
Yeah. So I made a lot of if-then loops, because I guess here's where my left brain came in. And it wasn't good for my right brain. So my left brain took each concept and drew it, and so I could understand it. and I got as far as, so all my pages are like, you gotta be kidding me.
Wow.
So,
I don't like that too, but that doesn't mean I understand it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I have lots of highlighting too.
Yeah.
So I got to page 261, and then my brain hurt. So it's kind of like what you guys said. You can, it was an exercise for me to really try to understand it, because the first time through I just accepted it, but this time through I wanted to see if I could accept it. And so it really spoke to my computer programming brain, which really now doesn't help me in my meditations with Tom, because now I'm back in my left brain. So you guys are way ahead of it, way ahead of what we should be doing. So yeah, kind of like what you said, Vanessa, make it mine, make it personal. So I made it really personal down to the nth degree.
And don't worry, Donna. Being ahead of us is just an artificial construct.
Right. And I'm not really ahead of you. I'm just in a parallel. And I sent you guys a link on Euclidean versus non-Euclidean, which really
Yep,
helped.
this was not appreciated, Donna. That was not helpful.
I understood the Euclidean part, but I couldn't understand the other part because she didn't really give you an example.
No, she didn't. But basically what he said at the end of the section was, I only explain that for people that are into relativity. And I went, so it just means space is curved versus equal.
Mm-hmm.
It's really only for geeks and nerds who don't need to understand it. But for me, it's helped me. But all I'm back is then, where am I? Where am I? And that's what I said like 15 chapters ago, didn't I? Where am I?
Oh, yeah.
So when they talk about curved space, and a lot of times they'll have a picture of, like, you know, the bigger the planet, the more it curves. And I just look at the picture and go, oh, okay. And just
curved.
Move on. Like,
it's how you can do geometry in the curved space. It doesn't mean anything it's just for nerds. He might as well have said that.
But how does it help me connect with my spirit guide? That's what I want to know.
I think he did say it's just for nerds. He just used different words.
Basically, at the end, it says, get out of your left brain. Get into your left brain.
Basically.
That was the one I highlighted, and I'm like, okay, that's good.
He also, at some stage, says something like that. If you don't understand this, don't worry. I was like, okay, yeah, highlight that. Okay.
And I highlighted that one too, and then I was good.
I wanted to this time. I really wanted to understand it. So I got it up until page 261. Then I had to stop. I'm not ahead. I'm just in left brain. You guys are much better off being right-brained. Much.
I'm not specifically a right-brained person, but
no, okay, all right. Well, I wish I was more right.
I have a serious question, just a sort of broad question before we jump in. For people, I haven't read Tom's books, so this is my first time through. And he alludes a lot like, okay, just hold on, here's a concept, it'll become important later. When you get to later, do you need this? Like, do you come back? Thank God I understood chapter 31.
I don't think so.
No. Not at the level of detail he's talking about. When he says you just need to understand the big concept,
right.
That's all you really need to understand. And if you're somebody who's into all this stuff and you understand the math part, okay, but it's not required.
Yeah.
Okay.
These are just the building blocks for the left-brained people.
Right. Okay. So if you're a scientist and you're trying to poke holes in his theory because you're like, wait a minute, the theory of relativity says he's giving all the arguments to those people.
Right.
Yes.
I think he said that this book is written for left-brained people trying to move to the right side.
Yeah, it's an on-ramp for people to take through the left brain so that they can open up their right hemisphere.
I'm left-brained too, and I'm trying to let go of that and trying to see it through the right brain, but my left brain keeps pulling me back.
Yeah, this didn't help, Daniel, huh? This didn't help. It wasn't an on-ramp. It was a detour into the desert.
Yeah.
But I don't know if he's talked about it or if it's in this book, but he says there's a lot of books out there for those people who don't need the math and they don't need the science and they just already believe. this
Yeah.
was written for the other people who are like, no, I'm not going to just believe it. I need to understand why.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it's at the level of detail that it is. But if you already believe or feel that way or think there's something, then you're fine. You don't have to have the math and the science.
I really believe, but I like to know the why behind it too.
Thank you. Yeah.
I found some of it very interesting, because it's like, oh, okay, well, I understand, but I don't understand at the level he's talking about. But it's like, makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Well, I really like the one quote that you sent, Suzanne. Just take the big ideas and leave all the details, right? And so that's what I ended up doing, was mining it for some gems, and there were quite a few that I found that really resonated with me. So on that note, why don't we jump into it and see what we highlighted, what stood out.
Wait a minute, I'm not sure Donna should have a turn.
Okay, I'll just listen.
Donna can help summarize those for us.
Okay, what he meant was.
Yeah. So yeah, what do we have on the first page there?
Okay.
Nothing.
Space is structure, time is dynamic. That's all you need to know.
Space is structured, time is what?
Dynamic.
Dynamic.
So space is our playground. We have to have a structure. Oh, I was supposed to talk. Wait a minute.
No, that was good.
It's helpful.
So
Space
space
is
is structure. Space is our playground.
Right.
So this is our playground. So that's space. It's structure. Time is dynamic. Time, you're here this morning, and at 10 o'clock you're at the mall, and at 12 o'clock you're at the movie theater. It's dynamic. It's moving across this playground. You're not just in a sandbox in the playground. You move. It's dynamic. That didn't help, did it?
No, it does. Thank you.
Okay. And so what he's saying is he's presenting, this is space, spatial. This is time, we're moving. Because this is a virtual reality, it has certain constraints.
Mm-hmm.
I can't jump 20 feet. I can't jump 10. Hosanna, you can't jump 50. So that we're in a virtual reality where as we move, we all move within a relatively same rule set.
So even though we have different abilities within the rule set, there's still an upper limit to how far people can jump.
Correct. And that's the rule set.
That's the rule set.
That's the constraints of this space playground, time movement.
That's within this PMR.
In this
So we have a rule set based on our particular PMR, and then each of us individually have potential further constraints based on our physical, I guess it's not physical, but what we think of as our physical body.
Mm-hmm.
So he's just introducing these concepts of, like you said, the birth of space-time. So we have to understand, what does he mean by space and time, and then how is that meaningful in our particular, because it's going to get rougher. It's going to get choppier in a few minutes.
Yeah. But yeah, that's a good intro. Yeah.
But it'd have been much more helpful if he'd used real English to explain that.
I was thinking about that. Like, give us a Cole's Note version of this. Like, speak English to us, right?
I just did.
I mean, so like in the first sentence of the second paragraph, where he says, space-time from the point of view of my big toe is a particular pattern of constraints applied to the energy transfers between individuated consciousnesses. And he says,
what page are you on?
the very first one.
First page.
First page.
You're in the second paragraph?
Second paragraph.
First,
Okay, got it. Go
Read through.
Okay.
First sentence of the second paragraph. Space-time from the point of view of my big toe is a particular pattern of constraints applied to the energy transfers between individuated consciousnesses. So can I just ask, this is how I understood it. Tell me if this is, or understood kind of, well, what you just said, Donna, is that without space and time, the construct of space and time, things would be much too disorganized.
Right.
So in order to evolve and grow and learn and do all these other things and have this playground, we needed the structure of space and time, because that was the next sort of logical step for profitable evolution.
Yeah.
Right?
Correct. So if we're going to talk, you and I are
Wait
going
a
to talk.
second. Let me just ask one other question. And so I just want to make sure that's it. And
Yeah.
those constraints of space and time give us like those guardrails that sort of force us to be in this PMR and have experiences with each other, which is this energy transfer between individuated units of consciousness. They force us to have experiences from which we have the opportunity to reduce our entropy and learn. Well, learn and reduce.
I think that's how it evolved. Like Awu didn't have time. Awu, I think, had that time concept with the time cells, I think he called it. And then it said, well, to create for our reality, we needed space-time to get a better understanding, to evolve. How did he call it? To increase our consciousness, awareness, and learn and grow at the same time. So it was, I think it was through trial and error that it said, hey, this is a cool concept. Let's move forward from here.
Right, and you have to have, they have to be structured, because if time is all wonky, where in one time, if it's not consistent, then you have no way to, it just
you can't organize it.
Yeah, it's not organized, and it's like, well, when is the next moment? How long does that take? Because if it's not consistent. So
A lot of times when I read Tom and I'll write all this out, I'll think about what's the opposite. So if we weren't constrained, that means Susan is talking really slow. And I'm talking really fast. There's no way we could interact properly. Or so yes, Sylvia, and yes, Suzanne. That's in Daniel. That's what I'm getting. And I don't to even begin to assume that I know the mind of Tom Campbell. It's just these words on the page and its meaning to me.
It's your interpretation.
My interpretation. Mm-hmm. So when I say yes, it makes sense based on the playground and interactions and how we move. It has to, for entropy, we have to be organized, I guess. Does that help, Ozana? Does that?
Yeah, I'm really benefiting a lot from just listening to you. Thank you.
Cool. Okay, why don't we go over to the next page, 256. You guys have anything on that page?
Well, the only thing I underlined, which is kind of what Donna just summarized, was in the 1, 2, 3rd full paragraph, and about the middle of the paragraph, the sentence that starts with, the point or purpose of space-time is to produce a specialized, consistent, virtual experience to individual constrained subsets of consciousness called conscious entities or beings. So just what you were saying, the purpose of it is to provide this consistent thing so we can operate and have experiences with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
It's the same thing on the previous page, but this is why the AUM invented it. Exactly.
And I guess it found out this is the most profitable way to learn and grow.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Which is the last sentence of that page, which says, within the space-time structure, the PMR rule set defines the processes that make us and our space-time uniquely profitable to AUM. Okay.
That's it. Easy peasy.
yeah, you have to imagine at some point perhaps it wasn't consistent and
what was it before? Well. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it has to be this way because it wasn't this way.
Right.
So it was the other way and it wasn't profitable.
Right.
And I'm guessing that it went through all these simulations and
exactly
and found out that this was the best way to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have everybody on the same page.
Literally and figuratively.
Yeah, you need.
Yeah, I had that same part, Sylvia, underlined too, because it says it very succinctly in that one line, right? That one sentence. Thoughts on 256. Anything from 257?
257 was a eye opener for me. The second paragraph, he was talking about digital simulations like those run on our mainframe. So when you're running a simulation, so you're the programmer, so you live in this reality, but now you're going down a level into the computer reality, right? Are you with me? Right. So I'm now gonna make a video game, and I have to make it look like what it is up here. So if I'm gonna sell a video game, I have to make that playground look like my playground. Otherwise, no one would buy it if I had something else. So he said, these digital simulations model what appear to be analog events at the macro level. And so I never thought of it from the AUM before. I only thought of it from within our reality. So it would be like, I'm in the world of Warcraft. I live in Warcraft. I think Warcraft is the only environment. I never thought about there being a computer programmer up above programming it. And so I took that to mean that up above us, the AUM is the programmer. And it changed everything for me. Again, I could be am I being too nerdy again? Because it really changed to me to think like the AUM instead of stop thinking like me, but start thinking like the AUM. And like you said, Suzanne, it doesn't really matter at some point. You just have to accept, okay, this is a virtual reality, but this makes it come real for the nerds and the programmers. This was really cool.
So I have a question about that, which is that I think he cautions us. I mean, that makes sense as you state it. That's totally helpful. But what the loop I get into when I feel like, oh, I think I understand it. Oh, I think I don't understand. Oh, I think I do. I think
laughing.
Is that he also then says that we have to be careful not to anthropomorphize or whatever AUM.
Yeah.
And so,
Right.
like, it's not like this intentional programming that AUM is doing. It's like evolutionary programming.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes, and we made Vanessa laugh and Suzanne leave the room.
Why? What did I do?
No,
I
my
know what
breakfast
Vanessa
was
was
being
laughing
delivered.
about.
I'm sorry.
I had breakfast being delivered. That's why I left.
I need another programmer here with us to be able to go, yes, that's what I thought too.
Well,
And the rest
I
of
mean,
you go,
the
yeah,
sentence
okay.
that
Well, the
I
programmer is running all these simulations, and then said, "Oh,
Yes.
what's the best alternative for
Right.
for life to go on, or for consciousness to go on?"
That's all they're saying. I'm sorry, it's just like, yeah.
so the sentence I underlined was in the paragraph above, where
Hey,
it talks about AUM under pressure to improve itself has to involve profitable internal environments and blah blah blah, and then the entropy of its own system. And I underlined that because it's like that's what we're supposed to be doing. We're under pressure. We're having to go through the same processes that it did, and so we're now trying to evolve our internal environment in order to improve. And I think a lot of what he's done is use really fancy words in math and science to just show you that this is basically whatever AUM has done. You have to go through the same process. So it went through these processes to improve itself, and now that's what we're supposed to be doing.
Because we're given all these constraints, the environment, everything. How do we deal with it to make it profitable for us?
And just like he talked about in what we went over in last week, it's we're at that place where our internal is now becoming more important than our external.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What were you laughing at, Vanessa?
Yeah.
I'm sitting at our dining table, and my man was over at the other end, and he was making silly faces and teasing. So,
If
like,
there's someone else listening into this conversation, I'm sure they would be like, what?
he was calling us nerds, basically.
Yeah, we're nerds.
Not all of us.
Wait a minute.
Sorry, so I'm lost now. What are we on? We're on page 258?
258.
Yeah.
258 is, you can ignore 258 to the bottom because it's only for scientists that are stuck on relativity. How?
Yeah, I have the very bottom line.
The bottom line.
Yeah.
Yeah, the duality part.
Yeah, each reality cell exists as a duality, a condition
Exactly.
relative to some different condition, each condition existing only in relation to the other. So in that essence, we need duality, right?
Mm-hmm.
This from that.
I don't really.
Yeah, so when I sent the Euclid thing, it was all about curvature and time space. You don't need to. That's the important one right there.
Okay, Vanessa, can you explain that? Or what do you take from that? I just don't know what to do with that. The duality. I mean, I understand that it needed to be a duality so that it could be this, not that, this, not that, to start the wave. Is that all we're talking about, or is there something more?
That's where I went with it too, is that we need to be able to differentiate this from that.
Got it.
Over on the next page.
This is where it gets really detailed.
And he starts
Concept of
talking
time.
about how different places run on different time.
Right.
Mhm.
The thing that flashed in my head was an old episode of Star Trek where they went to this planet, and there was this planet of people who ran really, 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 really fast.
Mhm.
And so comparatively speaking, humans were really slow. And they magically found some science to get a couple of them to run really, really, really fast. But overall, that's just what it reminded me of. It's just that some of us are running on different time, and AUM's time is so much faster, and it can do so many more things in the amount of time.
That's basically it.
While we're just moving through sand comparatively.
Mhm.
And it's like, okay, so it can do a lot more stuff in the time it takes us to do anything.
Mhm.
And that was all I really needed to take from it.
That's the main concept to take away.
Yeah.
But the important thing is here, I think there's two really, really important concepts on this page. That first one, like you just said, Suzanne, so that when you start going into other realities, when you go into other realities, you're going to be doing that. Remember, he taught us telepathy with non-PMR and PMR? Because of this, things are going to be faster. So when you're out there and you're having an interaction, it's not going to be in the way that you think, because it's a thought response environment and communication is telepathic. And that's really important to understand when you go into those other realities. Okay, so that's one concept, the concept of time speeding up. The second,
Or slowing down.
Yes, absolutely. And then it goes back to what I said about, remember I said that AUM is doing, we have to get in the mind of the AUM. So the second important thing is a virtual reality. It's within the actual reality of your consciousness. There's no physical space. That's huge on this page.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When you're reading and you go, oh, I don't understand delta T, so I'm going to skip it. He kind of buries some things in here, like at the end of page 258, that last sentence, it's really critical and has nothing to do with the above paragraph. Here, it's talking about, if you skip over this page because it says delta T, and I don't get that, you kind of miss you have to go back and do what you did, Suzanne. You have to go, well, that means when I go into other realities, it's going to be sped up or slowed down. And two, the virtual reality that we're in right now, this playground that we are in, this us, all of us here, is a virtual reality. And that's really, really hard to understand because we think this is real. You knock on the table, that's real.
Mm-hmm.
Donna's real, Vanessa's real, goes on. All you guys are real, but it's saying, but we're in this virtual reality. Does that make sense? Does that, do you begin to, he's trying to have us begin to understand those concepts. Yes,
Yeah.
no?
Well, I had the second to last paragraph, that whole paragraph right there, I had almost all of it highlighted, especially what stood out is towards the end of it, where he says that at its root, space is no more than the perception of space within consciousness, an illusion that provide the experience of space to subsets of individuated consciousness interacting within our virtual reality. And then at the end there he says, space is a computational construct within the LCS. And that's understanding that space is just a computation. That's all it is. Computing. It's not real. It doesn't actually exist. It's just a computation for us to be able to play in this, like you said, playground in this virtual reality.
Right. For me to understand that, it was like, say you're in a dream and you dream of someone else. You can't physically touch that person. It's just there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I
Whereas in this
think
reality,
really,
you can touch and feel the person.
part of what I took away from this is, even if you never understand any of this, that doesn't limit you from having experiences, because there's lots of people who have experiences and they've never once read this stuff. So if you read it and understand it and it makes sense, it's like, okay, that could probably help you, but it isn't actually even required to go out and have these experiences. Exactly. That you understand other consciousnesses or other places have a different time, factor. It doesn't really matter. You can still have the experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I guess it's for the left brain who wants to know the why behind it all.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it helps if you're going in there. Okay, let's take the opposite. If you didn't know this, when you first went over, like Bob Monroe, he had no idea what he was seeing and doing. So this is helpful, like a guide to the other side. If you don't get caught up in the details, you're right, Suzanne, but it's helpful to know, possibility. It's not, I didn't make that up.
It's helpful, but it isn't required. And it might give you some more understanding of, oh, that was a whatever. But it just...
Right. I'm agreeing with you. I'm agreeing with you.
For sure. And I've heard Tom say too that, when we get stuck on this type of material and we're in our headspace and we're analyzing, oftentimes we're using that as a distraction to actually do the real work of uncovering our fears, pulling them out by the roots, because that's where we actually need to spend most of our time, and that's where the challenge is. So yeah, I've heard him talk about that as well. So just always wanting to keep this personal and relate it back to our own life. But to wrap up this page, I like at the bottom, the last paragraph where he says, "Are you kidding? There's no physical space."
Right.
What?
That's right.
And then he goes on to say, well, this is not new. You've heard this from Einstein before too, right? So yeah.
I think from the point of our view, like in our human experience, on one level, it's really important to understand there is no physical space. At another, on another level, it's important to recognize that our rule set does give us the perception of physical space. And so, so if we're the dwarf in the video game, which has a set of constraints that says the dwarf, if he bumps into a tree, will, knock his head and fall down. To that dwarf, the tree has mass and volume because that's what the rule set determines. So to us, we can hold both true at the same time, that, our rule set has given us, solid wood and all these other things. Even if it's a construct, it's a construct that has meaning for us in our, experience.
Yeah, exactly. That's important to know as well.
Because we don't want to toss it out at the same time. Like, it's good to
Right.
understand, wow, there's more than this, but there is actually also this, and that's an everyday lived experience.
Yeah, for sure. To see the big picture. Yeah.
Or did we lose Donna?
No, it's just I'm going to start being quiet because I think right
Oh, no,
now.
I just couldn't see you on my screen.
Oh, can you see me?
Yep, I can
I
see
can
you.
see it all the time. Yeah.
Okay. No, I just was quiet because those were the major concepts I think we needed to continue into this detail. But the important concepts is what you just said, what everybody's saying. You don't need it, but you do. I mean, back in 7th grade science, the first time the teacher said, when introducing atoms, everybody knock on your desk, that's solid, but it isn't. So since that moment, you keep thinking about how can that be? If you're a left brainer, how can that be? What does that mean? Anyways, I don't want to get stuck in this detail. I'm just going to be quiet because I feel like I need the right brainers to teach me the rest of the chapter. And if you need me to help with the concept, let me know. But it's like, you're right. I know all this in my left brain. I understand it. It's helpful to me, but it doesn't help me when I put on the headset and listen to Tom and try to go out into these other realities through my right brain, through my being.
And overall, I think that's really his bigger point. It's like, look, if this stuff helps you, fine. If it doesn't, don't get caught in the details and don't let it keep you doing from what you're really trying to do. And that's really, for me, the biggest picture of take what you need, leave the rest, and go do what you need to do in order to improve the quality of your consciousness.
Yeah, for sure.
Make sure you hook up with at least 4 other people that are right.
Just moving us along on the next page there, he talks about kind of actually, Donna, what you were saying and how, I guess, what is that, the second paragraph there? He says, from my experience and that of many other NPMR explorers, communications are seemingly instantaneous and useless in NPMR. So it's just like these direct downloads of information, right?
Right.
And that's because the speed of our NPMR is so much faster than our PMR.
Right.
That's all you need. And like Suzanne said, you can be out there, have a download and go, oh. You don't have to sit there and know how many delta T's it was.
Right.
You got
I mean,
download.
the only thing I highlight on this page and is towards the bottom where he talks about, from my experience and the experience of others, an enormous number of increments of NPR time passed during each quantum of PMR time. And that summed it up for me. Like, we're on different rates of time, and a lot of them are much faster than us. Okay.
Much faster, yeah.
Yeah. I get it. I don't need to know the math. I don't need to know how many times faster they are. It's just like, we're on different rates of time. I understand that.
Yeah.
That's all you need to know.
Exactly. And he goes into great detail in the next few pages following that. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. Was there anything that stood out from the next few pages, 261?
Just the most important one, which is collect the big ideas and let the details go for now. And I think that's if they're bothering you, or if you don't understand them, or, if they're getting in your way, however you want to phrase it, but just.
Yeah, for sure. And then Sylvia, yeah.
So the only thing on those 2 pages, I agree, that sounds great. And maybe this is irrelevant, so someone can just say, it's not important to understand this, but this whole thing about time standing still in between the increments, that kind of made, which on 262, the paragraph after the indent, and sort of, it says between in bold. Can you see that? Between increments in PMR. Time stands still in PMR between increments. Things continue to happen. And it's like, what? Like, yeah. Does anybody?
Remember, it's just states. We just turn, for every PMR, for every delta T, that's when our state changes on or off. Whereas as our state changes on or off, in NPMR, it's done at a billion times.
When you're saying R state, are you saying AUR or just the letter R?
No, our PMR state, our current state.
PMR. Okay, got it.
Right. So our PMR state will change like this, but our the NPMR states would have changed a billion times.
But what
Right,
about
and if you were to
standing still in between the increments?
I think it's
see,
just the visual effect that it's standing still, because from one state to our next state in the PMR, the NPMR state has changed many times.
And we do stand still here. We do stand still. It's like we're basically like
It's like
doing all its stuff, and then we do our next increment, right?
yes.
And that's where that old
exactly choppy resolution.
that old Star Trek episode is visually helpful because you see the really fast people just moving and doing a lot and having conversations and doing all this activity, and the humans are like. And so visually, it's very helpful because you can one's going really fast and the other one comparatively seems to be standing still.
Yeah, and it's funny because this isn't the first time I've heard this either. I don't know about you guys, but like I've heard this from other spiritual people who have said, in other realities, time moves really fast there, and we're comparatively very slow in this reality. They don't have all the science to support it, but they also have that idea as well. So it's just neat seeing how everything kind of overlaps.
I think last week I talked about that movie Inception, which you go to a different reality, their time frame's different than ours.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, on page 263, the second paragraph below the indent, about halfway through, if you can imagine this, you will have a minute glimmer of AUM's perspective. And that's what he said on the previous page that I didn't get to. This chapter really is about the AUM's perspective.
Yeah.
Get out of my perspective here. It was a game changer.
For sure, that's good to point out. And I really like in the middle there, because it kind of puts it into perspective. He says, to our view, Om is capable of moving in super fast motion. Imagine watching all the movies ever made in a fraction of that's how fast Om is, right?
Yeah.
So if you look at the opposite of that, when AUM looks at us, we appear to be standing still almost.
I think we're sluggish bacteria growing in a petri dish.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There you go.
To give you a new perspective of your world, which is different. That's all he's saying. It just made me look differently. That's all. I like it.
Okay, so over on 264, anything on that page?
The only thing I took away from this one is that AUM can define or evolve as many clocks as necessary for each group of specialized cells that define a unique dimension of reality. So for me, it was like this, it can make as many MPRs or PMRs or whatever, and they can all be different rates, and it just has the ability to do that. And it's like, okay, we all have a different set of constraints.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
Something interesting, Vanessa, when I saw your boyfriend walk by you, I had imagined him kissing you afterwards, and he did so.
Oh.
It's weird.
Accessing the future probable database. I like
that.
Time sped up for Daniel in the now.
Yeah. I just thought I had to share that. It was interesting.
Yeah. Where are we at? 255. I had a lot highlighted on there.
Okay.
What did you guys have?
Okay, Vanessa, what do you got?
Well, I basically, this is actually highlighted from our first time around, Daniel.
Okay.
But basically, I guess I was just in awe of how of this big toe and how it explains the theory of relativity, something that he's been able to explain. I thought that was pretty cool. So I guess it's, 1, 2, the second paragraph at the end there, he says, thus, the physicists search for a single little toe that derives both relativity and quantum mechanics from what overarching understanding has been accomplished. So yeah, I thought that was neat.
Wait, where is that?
Yeah.
So you guys, I'm
At
on
the end of the second paragraph.
yeah, you're in the big book? Are you in the big book?
I'm in the big book.
Okay.
You're in 265. What paragraph again?
Which
So
paragraph?
it is the second paragraph in the middle there. So it starts with, you, dear reader, have now derived from first principles the fundamental understanding upon which the theory of relativity is based. You guys see
The
that?
paragraph starts with you, dear reader?
Yeah.
I don't see that.
I've got it. It's the first full paragraph
paragraph.
on that page. It starts about a third of the way down in the big book.
It's same with the little book. You, dear reader, on page 260.
No, you, dear reader. I have my paragraph starts with reality cells, memory cells, binary
Yeah.
cells, all cellular and digital creations, or sometimes
I think. Do you
Yeah,
have
same with mine.
Your books are different. They're not all aligned, right? It's,
No. See what happens when you're in a non-constraint?
Chaos.
What happens?
Chaos.
This is a great example. We need to be on the same page, and we're not. So this is what happens. It's not very.
And look at the entropy. The higher entropy it's caused.
Yeah. Now we're all off track. Going, wait, where are you? What's happening? I don't have that.
This
Yeah.
is a perfect example.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't see it. Sylvia and I have the same.
I
We're
love-
on the same page. Ha ha.
What's that beginning of your page on 265?
Right. The first full paragraph starts with reality cells, memory cells, binary cells. Everything seems to come down to cells.
Oh, wow. That's way off.
Where is that?
Yeah, where is that?
You're on page 266 at the bottom. So go back a page for you guys.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Gotta go back a page.
Gotta go back in time.
Yep.
Back.
I just think he must have added. I mean, mine's a 2003 version. I don't know what year yours is. I think he must have added a paragraph. I think that's just. I think the you, dear reader, we just don't have that.
Huh.
If you go
On
back
the previous
like
page,
7 paragraphs.
go back like
Mine's a 2003 version.
mine's a 2003. Let's go back.
It, like if I go back 2 or 3
Six.
pages.
Go back 6 paragraphs.
Mine says 2003 too.
Go back 6 paragraphs.
From reality cells or from where?
Yeah, from reality cells. From reality cells. Go back a page or until you see you, dear reader.
I have no. I can go back 15 paragraphs.
What does it start with?
You, dear reader.
You dear reader? I don't have you dear reader.
I have it.
Well, I'll take a picture of it and send it to our WhatsApp group.
That's bizarre. So my book has
Yeah,
second printing October 2007.
Mine is first edition.
Sorry.
2003.
Yeah, first edition February 2003. Second printing October 2007.
I don't have that.
Mine
The
is
picture
first
of
print.
them laughing their
Mine
butts
says,
off, but that's
first-
anthropomorphizing them.
well, it says first printing October 2007, second printing May of 2010, third printing March of 2012.
Okay, so yours is more it's newer than mine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I think that's the reality. That's it. It's just that he's just added a couple paragraphs.
Yeah.
That ding was you guys getting that paragraph or that chapter, that paragraph.
But I think Donna's point to how you need consistency in order to lower entropy, this is a perfect example
It
because
is.
here we have different versions that are not consistent and how much time was spent going, wait a minute. And that's, it really is a good example to show you need consistent rules that in order to operate.
You think this was done on purpose so that
I
we
think
could explain?
So much disorder.
Yes.
Because he knew in the future we would be having a book
Yeah.
with different versions.
Yeah.
Oh, he's laughing. But he laughed 200 years ago.
And Tom's now looked at that description. Check.
Look, they got it. I gave him a perfect example.
Exactly.
Can we lower our entropy and get back
Yes.
Yes, I
please,
agree.
let's lower it.
to the paragraph that starts with imagine this?
Okay, what page are you on? Imagine
Oh,
this.
no.
Oh yeah, it's for us. It's page 267, Suzanne. The third.
Oh, got it.
267.
Oh, right before then, though, Sylvia, the paragraph before then I had highlighted too.
Start with sometimes.
Yeah.
Woohoo!
I'm
Okay.
totally lost now.
Oh, got it.
Okay, Daniel. for
Sylvia,
me,
where are you?
It's on page 265, the second to last paragraph, starting with the word sometimes.
Okay, thank you.
Oh,
You're welcome.
Yeah.
okay, we'll have to figure out who has what version.
Well, I think chapter 32 is when we'll all get back together again.
Yeah, so I really like that whole paragraph. Sometimes an evolving consciousness system may in time develop terrific complexity and seemingly endless potential as the fundamental process iterates upon itself repetitively, eventually evolving into something that begins to mimic its source. And then this last sentence where he says, when the full circle and the successful product of the evolution towards self-improvement begins to take on the characteristics of its source, it becomes a partner in the process of consciousness evolution. I really like that because being a macrocosm, being a micro of the macro, I feel like we have that ability to take on the characteristics of source. And then we become a partner in the process of consciousness. So we're not now just aimlessly drifting through life. We're active participants driving the evolution of our own individual consciousness that then helps the whole to move forward. So I loved that paragraph.
Yeah. When I read that, I was thinking of how humans have developed computers, which allowed us to develop our own ability to increase our level of consciousness much faster through using technology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because we can control how a computer works, we can control its own rule sets, or we can create the rule sets to create the programs that we want to simulate. And then from there, we can create the probability within that simulation and bring it to our reality.
And that's funny how you are technical. You're a techie, right? And that's where you go with it.
Yeah.
But where I go with it is characteristics of its source. I go to becoming this loving, compassionate being, and by doing that, I'm a partner with LCS, helping to move forward, to decrease my own entropy, to get rid of my fears, to let go of the ego that's very selfish, and to open up and cooperate. So it's interesting to see how you can take either the left brain approach or the right brain approach.
Yeah,
to it.
but it's our perspective that creates where we go.
Yeah, and both are needed, like we looked at last night. With the cognitive being fundamental, we need that ability too.
My clairvoyant friend, who what she talks about, and she has all these spirit guides talking to her. It all fits quite neatly with what Tom talks about, although she talks about it in a less technical way. But she always says that our purpose is to serve the oneness. And I think that I like that phrasing of it, serving the oneness. She's like, Sylvia, if ever you're confused about what to do, just stand back and just, focus on serving the oneness. And then, that should help you make a better choice in that moment.
Yeah.
For all these individuated units of consciousness out of one fabric. And we imagine our own, every individual choice we make having those ripple effects. I just love the notion of serving the oneness.
Yeah, I like that. And then the next paragraph, Sylvia, you had.
Oh no, I just was using that as a marker to get us together.
Oh, okay. I don't know. I had it highlighted. I'm not sure why. And then I guess the next paragraph after that, he says, are you beginning to sense the great cycle of consciousness evolution of which you are a part? And then further on, he says, you are an important player in a consciousness cycle that drives system profitability, capability, operational power, and brightness upwards as it exhausts entropy.
Serving the oneness.
Serving the oneness.
Yep. Got it.
Okay, next page, 268. I didn't have anything on that page.
I didn't either.
I highlighted a bunch of stuff, but as I go through it, I'm not sure why.
Next page over then.
Brilliant. It's brilliant. 268 is brilliant. Okay.
I think the one thing, sorry, just on 260, what you guys have is 268 in the paragraph that starts with our PMR space-time. He just reinforces this view a few sentences down that says, from our point of view, other PMRs exist in non-physical worlds within other dimensions. From our perspective, every subset of specialized reality cells in AUM defines another dimension of existence, another reality, or if you prefer, another virtual reality. So almost a refer back to Donna sort of saying, you know, AUM sits above us, you know, and from his perspective, then there's, you know, all those other dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, in that same paragraph, I just had the last sentence underlined where he says, these specialized subsets of OM represent separate experiments in consciousness evolution, propagating their way to whatever comes out of them. Yeah, I don't know, I like that idea of it being an experiment. You know, it's not predetermined. We're not told what to do. It's just an experiment to see how we will evolve, what choices we will make. Anything else on that page?
I'm not sure what page we're on.
We're on 269.
Yeah, okay, that's what page I'm on.
Yeah.
On that one, the only thing I've highlighted is the last full paragraph, the first sentence. AUM sprouts virtual reality systems, universes as the Earth sprouts species of plants and animals, each contained in its own dimension or piece of thought space within the big computer, and all in the same network. So it's continuing to make these realities to, you know, evolve, and it's continuing. It's not like we weren't the last one created. You know, there's a bunch before us. There's a bunch after us.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I like that. I highlighted that too in the next sentence as well, where he says, OM creates dimensions and manipulates their content similarly to how we create ideas and write them down as paragraphs of symbols. I like that because it just goes to show how simple it is to create these different realities, and how to put the content together. It's as simple as what we do when we're writing and creating stories and poetry. I like that metaphor. Next page over, 270.
Hey, well, he describes, again, what we've been saying in terms of good, bad, the duality. There's not higher or lower. I like that. Higher or lower have no meaning relative to a non-geometrical dimension. That's the Euclidean thing. I thought that was cool. She said to herself when speaking to her left brain. Sorry. What do you think? I enjoyed that. Huh? There was a math joke. I laughed. Laugh with me. Just humor me. Love me for who I am. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I'm going to be quiet.
No, I want to be able to enjoy the joke. I don't even know what page we're on.
Yeah, same here.
So let's see. I think you're ahead of us. So if you look back a page,
I think we're behind you a couple pages.
Note
No?
that I generally do not refer to higher or lower dimensions. Higher and lower have no meaning relative to non-geometrical dimensions.
What page is that? Oh, here it is. It's at the bottom of 269 on mine.
What does that start with? Sorry?
Note that I generally do not refer to higher or lower dimensions.
Oh, okay.
I don't think we have that, Daniel.
It is. Sylvia, Page
The very
268.
bottom.
You're in the middle.
Oh, you're behind us now.
Oh, okay, yeah, I see.
Oh, you're behind us now.
We're going.
Not that that's relative to anything.
In terms of pages,
We can transport, like we can time travel.
transport to the paragraph. The second is higher and lower have no relative meaning to non-geometrical dimensions. Think of Flatlandia. They were just lines.
Yeah.
So in a line, you have no higher or lower. You just have next to.
It's just plain, right? One
Sorry,
plane.
it's just a math thing. It just cracked me up. So
You know, a joke's not funny if you have to explain it. So
okay, I'm sorry.
the fact that Thomas had to explain it means
Several times. It's just I'll just laugh. Just keep
It
going.
just goes.
That's why I said I'm not speaking anymore because I'm
No,
just
keep
cracking
sharing,
up.
Donna. It's awesome.
Oh,
We just
thank you.
I might not be a good audience member for it though.
So there's an aside there, right, where he says all good sages know this one big truth, and then he jokes around about the jackass. So just so we can all kind of be on the same page. And then the next page over, he talks about, I guess it's the next paragraph after that aside. I don't know why. I have certain things highlighted in that. So he goes, space-time is a construct of consciousness. So think of consciousness as a digital medium rather than a building material.
Mhm.
And then the next paragraph, he says, primordial AUO is a relatively simple energy form that is the basic foundation of consciousness. Reality cells are created by the relative existence of this way and that way pair. So that's going back to what we looked at earlier. So having that duality, we need that duality in order to evolve, in order to distinguish growth. Oops. I don't know why my legs are so then further down, the second to last paragraph in that sentence, he says, additionally, a lower entropy consciousness eventually develops the ability to use directed conscious intent to reduce its entropy further. Again, I really like that we have the ability to direct our consciousness to evolve, right?
Yeah, the only sentence I had highlighted was a lower entropy consciousness system has more power, more energy available to do work, a higher, more useful level of organization. So that's me skipping over all the details and just going for the big concept of, look, lower entropy allows you to do more things. You have more power, you have more ability, and that's why it's important. And I didn't need the math or all the other stuff. That's me just going for the high level stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Vanessa, right after that, what you just said, the rate of evolutionary progress increases as the system pulls itself up by its bootstraps, evolves to actualize lower and lower entropy configuration.
Got it.
Yeah.
The way I look at it is how technology is increasing ever so exponentially.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, neat, awesome. So moving on to the next page over. Anything there? I don't know, I had the paragraph highlighted where he says physical experience is generated. You guys see that one?
The middle.
Yeah, so physical experience is generated when the perception of an individuated consciousness, a sentient being, is constrained to follow the space-time rule set. Imagine a specialized space-time virtual reality trainer that is constrained by the space-time rule set to provide a causally consistent operational experience that enables an individuated consciousness to evolve to lower entropy states by exercising its intent through free will choice. The specific relationship defining space-time instruction set constitute the laws of space-time physics, PMR physics. So it's that relationship.
That's an awesome summary. It's really good.
It kind of just wraps it up right there.
Hosanna, are you right-brained? Hosanna.
Yeah, I even like the one above that says AUM is the computer and programmer, and the operating system, we sentient conscious beings are, as individuated subsets of consciousness, a bounded subset of highly organized, evolving, interactive reality cells. This is the only thing on this page that actually spoke to me. I said, oh, I finally there was something I understood.
You got something out of it.
Yeah, at least something.
Yeah. Anything over on the next page? Besides an evolving digital dude has never done?
That's the only thing.
Are we on 273?
Yeah.
Yeah, 273.
For us, I don't know what Daniel and Sylvia.
That's 271 for us.
Are we like-
71. I think we're about 2 pages back.
Okay.
I'm not jealous that you guys got 2 extra pages of content in this chapter.
Because earlier you had
Yeah,
to.
the thing
Kind
is-
of equaled out.
Sylvia, if you don't understand it, it's really meaningless. I mean, if you can't understand those 2 extra pages, it's like, I don't know. What's up?
Oh.
The very last paragraph there, the second to last, the last sentence. Well, the paragraph starts, because the attributes of space-time. You guys see that one?
Mm-hmm.
And the last sentence in that, he says, it is time that allows AUO to get organized, to create, store, and use information interactively, to evolve self-aware purpose and develop proactively. I just liked how that summed it up as well for time, as time is fundamental. Because a lot of teachings will say that time is not, time's an illusion, and it's only the now that exists. Whereas he's kind of saying here, this is why we have it: to create, to store, to use information interactively, and then evolve. We need time to be able to evolve.
So time is not an illusion. Space is an illusion. Correct?
Space.
Yeah,
Not
exactly.
physical space.
Yeah.
It's not physical space.
Right.
It's a really hard one. For most everyone, I would think. But time is naturally within consciousness, because we are, remember, actual reality is our consciousness. Virtual reality is our playground.
Yes.
So within our consciousness, there has to be some evolution, and evolution usually means time. It doesn't necessarily mean space.
Right.
You don't need a playground. You can have a thought experiment. Einstein would just sit and think. He didn't have to be anywhere.
Right. That's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Did you say it again, Donna? What you just said?
Um,
After actual reality is your consciousness, virtual reality,
is-
but your this physical reality.
So actual reality is within your consciousness.
Yeah.
Virtual reality is that space illusion, our playground.
Yeah. But then what did you say after that?
Then I said Einstein had thought experiments. He didn't have to be somewhere,
Yeah.
but he went into his own consciousness and said this. He said, on an airplane, you're inside the airplane and you're traveling at 1,800 miles an hour. If there's a fly inside the airplane and it's flying, it's moving, how fast is it really moving? It was a thought experiment. He sat there and thought, and then, did you get that?
Yeah.
How fast is the fly really flying?
Yeah.
It was a thought experiment. It was him thinking about, he didn't have to be anywhere in a lab. He didn't have to be in a playground.
Yeah.
He could just be inside his own mind thinking about that relationship.
Yeah, that's the Gedanken experiments or whatever.
Correct. It's just a thought experiment. And that's where actual reality is. Actual reality is inside us, in our consciousness. This is virtual reality.
Mm-hmm.
He says there's no physical space.
Yeah, I like what time.
If there's a virtual reality, if there is a virtual reality, is there an actual reality? Yes. And in the actual reality of our consciousness, time is an evolutionary inevitability.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Did I say that clearly? Do you get that one?
I'm
That's
good.
the
Yeah,
important one.
great.
Yeah, that clarified nicely. Thank you.
And then I like
Okay.
what Daniel said too, and that so time is fundamental, and it's space that is an illusion. Space is the computation, and so time being fundamental is something that's evolved in order to help us grow. So on the next page, he talks about there, the fundamental process could not help but find time, which is an artifact of change, on the path toward greater profitability. So at first it was just oneness, right? There was no duality, and then it realized that time would help it to evolve. So it was, like you said, an artifact of change that the fundamental process found.
He said it nicely. Time generates new degrees of freedom for consciousness to explore. Time allows dim consciousness to become brilliant.
Brilliant.
And yeah. And then the next paragraph, he says, time is fundamental to the existence of our reality, while space is a virtual perception based upon time in the constraint C.
Right.
So, yeah, just exactly what we were saying before.
Yeah.
And C is the speed of light.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
correct.
The constant C.
It's the constant in this PMR.
Constant.
Yeah.
Just in this PMR.
It says
It's
constraint.
constraint.
It is a constraint because that limits us.
It is a constraint, but I don't know. Is that grammatically correct? The constraint C, or did he mean the constancy? I guess it's either or. It doesn't matter.
It's part of the rule set for this.
It's a
reality.
constraint.
Probably meant, and the constraint of
It's a constraint.
Constancy.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're probably right. It's probably not grammatically perfect.
And then he goes on, he says, take a moment to ponder the deep connection we have with our reality. So did anybody do that? Did anybody have any epiphanies or
But
anything?
you skipped a paragraph that's really, I think, the one
Oh,
right
my
before.
bad, with the music?
The music is universal to all cultures and evokes a deep resonance. You consider that our consciousness is constructive of rhythm and pattern, then that's what the AUM saw. The AUM saw patterns and patterns within patterns, like one cell become hook up with another cell, and together I see a pattern that become a skeleton, and I see a pattern of skeletons that can have muscles on top of it. So this rhythm and pattern. If you look across the cultures,
Doesn't that lead to fractals later, where you just have these ever repeating patterns?
patterns, and they're all, the two things that are constant is geometry and music, because music is geometry.
Mm-hmm.
So we have this pattern. And so that's why I said, take a moment to ponder the deep connection we have with our reality. I had to throw in music and math into that. Because I can go anywhere in the playground and I can connect to someone playing music, which is a pattern in geometry. It has a time, 4/4 time, no matter where I am. And the connection on everyone here in PMR, that was deep for me. Did I lose you again? I didn't mean to.
No.
Okay. It's just really, really deep. That music and math is, like you said, Suzanne, it becomes fractals. It becomes, it connects us all here.
Yeah, and to take that sort of into the sort of more poetic range, it's
Yes.
that the music is this thing which just deeply resonates with us because it's so fundamental. And so it resonates.
And poetry, yeah. I guess I'm being right-brained, and I kind of surprised myself. It's poetry and music, and
Poetry in motion. There you go.
there you go. We're just really, and I think that's why we connect sometimes with people energetically, that what we would call energy, but I think you're connecting to that what deeply resonates in us.
Mm-hmm.
I always think that's because you have a past, well, not always, but I think that often it's because you have a past life connection with that person.
But it could be multiple different things that you
Absolutely.
can.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I resonate with Tom, and I asked him, I'm like, hey, Tom,
Yeah.
do you think we've incarnated together before? And he was like, no.
He said no.
Well, he's like, I doubt it. The only person that I was meant to meet here was Pamela.
Oh.
Wait, can I tell you a story?
Yeah.
Please.
My clairvoyant
Speak-
friend.
Yeah, there you
First
go.
time I met her, I actually went to see a clairvoyant like many people because my older son was sick and I was like desperate. You know, I was trying everything. I was like, yeah, I'll go see a clairvoyant. What? You know, let's do it. And then she was so like profound and said so many things that she kind of freaked me out. And it's a little hard. I've known Tom since I was 13. It's a little hard to freak me out, but she freaked me out. So I didn't go back for 9 months. And then I went back like a couple of times in quick succession and I was kind of testing her. So I put down 10 people that I felt like I had some resonance with and just like rapid fire would give her a name, like, you know, Christina Lyons or whatever. And she would just say, wow, like she's super sparkly. And I was like, yeah, my friend Christina is super sparkly. And she'd be like, okay, you know, just checking out the right person. Like, here's your past life connection, whatever. And they all really sounded profound. And then I came to Tom and I said, Tom Campbell. And she kind of went like, oh, like he's very different from everybody else you've asked about. And I said, yes. And she said, and you haven't seen him for a really long time. And I said, true. And she said, and he's quite a bit older than you. And I said, yes. And she was like, okay, I just wanted to make sure I had the right person. And then she was like, wow, well, I can see 2 past lives right away. One in which you guys are both men and you're like both Buddhist monks or whatever. And, you know, he's like your teacher. And then I see another one and you're both female and you're Native American and he's your grandmother. And she said, and so she said, so, you know, the relationship is very clear. He's like a teacher. And I can see that he plays that role in this life as well.
Wow.
And I kind of went like, whoa, it's totally crazy. And then I wrote to Tom and was like, oh, I told this person. And he was like, you know, he wrote some really dry, like 1-line response, like, focus on the quality of the relationship.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I thought this was so awesome. And Tom's like, blah, blah. Totally nonplussed, you know? Anyway. But I mean, that's pretty freaky when she sort of gets, you know, these people. And it was so, even like there was one friend I asked about that was a dancer. And she was like, oh, I can see a past life in which, you know, this person was a dancer. And there's no way she knew any of these people. And there were so many things that just were like so spot on.
Which friend is that? I think
her name's Ellen Tad. She's
Ellen, yeah.
Pretty, you know, well-known clairvoyant. And she just happens to live in the area, although she doesn't anymore. She's really ill right now. But anyway.
Ooh, sorry.
So, do you guys want to hear my little experience from the last week?
Yeah.
So, I've been recording my dreams again and doing interpretation. I'm really trying to work on lucid dreaming because I've had a couple of, you know, experiences with it. So, I had this dream about a friend I haven't seen in a really long time. And he's driving a van and I'm a passenger in the van. And I asked him, I said, so have you still quit drinking? And he was very sarcastic, like, yeah, you know. And so I do interpretation of these dreams. I'm trying to figure out, what does this mean? Well, I happened to have dinner with him and 3 other people last night. And I haven't seen him for a long time. No communication at all, no contact. And I see him last night and he's talking at dinner and he goes, yeah, a couple of weeks ago, I made this bet with a friend that, you know, we're going to quit drinking for a while. And I'm like, what? Wait, what? When did you make that bet? And it was just really weird for me that I had this hit on him that he had quit drinking. He wasn't really happy about it in the dream. And in real life, he'd made this bet unbeknownst to me. And he really wasn't happy about it. But he's like, yeah, I'm doing it, but I don't really like it. And it was just, so I had to tell him, and he was just looking at me like, that's weird.
There's a connection for sure. Wow. That's
so
awesome.
It was just really weird. It was, you know, neat. Like, okay, I'm going in and having these dreams, and, you know, maybe it was in some way showing me that, yeah, this stuff can work and you can, you know, I don't know.
Yeah,
that was my little experience for the week.
Cool. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
There's a book, I think it's called God Winks or something like that. I don't know if anybody ever read that book, but it's basically saying all these little coincidences are winks from the universe, you know, to let you know you're on the right track, you're not crazy, like, you know, we'll give you a little wink, you know.
And that's how I took it. Like, okay, it was just sort of this positive reinforcement to just keep working at it, just keep doing what you're doing, and here's a little, maybe you're on the right track event.
Yeah.
But,
Very cool. Love that. Well, I think we have, what, 8 minutes left here. This last, anything, well, obviously I think we all have the last paragraph, right?
yeah, I mean, the way I really summed it up is the last couple paragraphs I highlighted some stuff. But basically, it's like you got to start where you are and you know, pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
Mm-hmm.
Your entropy reduction is accomplished by not these big events that sometimes I keep waiting for, these really big events, but it's like each choice and each intent behind that choice, these small things over and over time. And that is how your quality, you know, your consciousness quality either gets better or it gets worse based upon what is the intent behind all those small everyday interactions. And for me, that summed it up really well. Like, it's not, I can't sit around waiting for the big moments. It's how do I interact with this person? How do I interact with that person? What is the intent behind what I'm doing on each of those things that is important, that will help me to improve or to not improve? So that's my summary.
Mm-hmm. I like that. And hearing you say that, the first thing that comes to mind is, yeah, I definitely want to be very, and I feel like I am, mindful and aware of how I'm interacting and engaging with others and how I'm perceiving them, always wanting to see them in the best light. And then also with myself too, because that's a constant, right? So how am I looking at myself? What's my relationship like with myself? How am I taking care of myself? Those choices I have available to me all the time, 24/7. So I'm really doing my best to be very conscious and aware of how I am with myself. Because there's that saying that's like, your relationship with yourself sets the tone for every other relationship in your life.
Yeah, and for me, I love this. For me, was another, you know, inspiration to get better again about the habit and the daily practice of meditation. You know, it's a lot of these things. If you can just make something a habit, there's such power in repetition. Whether it's, you know, yeah. I mean, again, Ellen, she used to say that she always practiced letting go of attachments while she was washing dishes or whatever. Like, she would have these habits that, you know, she would do on a daily basis. And certainly I saw, even from my son with dyslexia, how it was the day to day. It was something that happened over years of daily practice, is how, you know, he was able to read. And I just think that it's really tempting to want to leap forward, and the only way you leap forward is by, for 2 years, having consistency or whatever.
And I think another way to phrase that, no matter what words you use, but basically what I see as part of the foundation is just building awareness. Yeah. Building awareness of your, however you do it, through meditation or whatever, but you're building awareness in each moment, or you're not building it, you know, but the foundation to helping you to improve is building awareness of what you're doing and why you're doing it.
Why you're doing it. Yeah. And that's almost every spiritual teaching says, be here now, be present, be mindful in the moment, right?
But I find little habits to be helpful. Like, one of the things when I realized, you know what, you know, like, I'm good at gratitude, but not as good at unconditional love. So I started, when, I think I said this at another time, but it just brings it up here again. When I do my, you know, walk, which is a lot of people, running by, I practice just, oh, that man walking by, I'm going to send him unconditional love. Oh, this lady, so that, I'm practicing unconditional love, and until that time at which that becomes part of my being. And, not everybody's going to do, everybody's got their own thing that they're working on at this moment. But for me, it's quite helpful to think of a little habit to help me on whatever thing that I'm doing. And then eventually one day you're kind of like, wow, that comes a lot more naturally to me than it did, a year ago or whatever.
Because you keep practicing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Daniel.
No, I said that's because Sylvia keeps practicing it. So because
Yeah.
I was going to add is also its duality, because we've been talking really about dualities, is that what is distracting me? Like, okay, if I'm taking a walk and what's distracting me from growing? Shiny bauble. My friend and I said, oh, I saw a shiny bauble, so I forgot to go to the grocery store. So the point being, not only the intent of loving yourself and loving others, I also like to look at, did that thing distract me, and how can I, get back on track? I guess distracting, tracking. How does it keep me intent? Have you ever gotten distracted? So you do it, you just go, oh, what was I thinking? So I'd like to look at, what was that am I distracted by blah, blah, blah. And I just use that as a key. So whenever that word or that key comes in, I go, oh yeah, let me go back to Sylvia's walk, and I'm going to send unconditional love to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just looking at the duality.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Of course, if you never get distracted and you're always sending love, I guess you would never have that duality. Just saying. I would love that. Yeah.
I love this. Well, you guys, we have 2 minutes, so why don't we wrap it up with our closing circle? So just share any final insights, thoughts, any comments you want to make into sacred space, and
I'll start. I'm grateful for the habit of meeting with you guys on Saturdays, because it's really helping. So that's me.
Nice.
I'm grateful to have my health back. When you don't have it, you forget. So to have it back and to be back with you, I'm grateful. I'm grateful that you embraced me. I'm grateful that you love me.
Fist bump. Can we fist bump? Virtual fist bump.
Thanks, everybody. Love you guys. Thank you.
And I'm grateful for this opportunity on working on myself, and it's such a hard job. This dude is never done, like Tom says. So, and it also helps me to realize that if it's so hard to work on myself, how would I ever imagine to change anybody else?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for being here for me.
I'm grateful for you guys all showing up. I mean, I was at a meeting with Vanessa yesterday, and I didn't even read the chapter, so I got up really early to read it today. This morning, that's how I'm inspired by you guys, and just wanting to read it and wanting to participate in this fabulous book club.
Well, I'm grateful as well. I've had a number of challenges recently, health and otherwise, and sometimes it's like, oh, a book club, I have to read it. But when so I read it, but when we do this, I do get very excited. I do get much more into it, and it does inspire me. I was inspired so much that I decided to go to Tom's April workshop. It's immersive, and it's just, because for a while I was thinking, oh, I haven't evolved enough since the last time. What's the point? And then it's like, well, that's the whole point to go, is to get better. And so it helps generate excitement and the desire to continue doing this. And when you have to do this all by yourself, it is so much more difficult. And I realize we each have to do our own work, but when you're with a group of people who are like-minded, it makes it better. And I think it can help you to evolve a little bit faster. So thank you guys for being here every Saturday morning.
So I'm going in June in Virginia if anybody's going.
I might be going in June, and I might be bringing my son. I got to sign up. It's going to fill up, so I got to sign up soon.
Nice. To the Monroe Institute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Time's at the Monroe in June. You go to the Monroe page.
I've been there 3 times, so I don't know if I don't know if my wallet appreciates it. Sure.
Well, the Knoxville one isn't much less expensive by the time I did all the math, and for the room that I got, but
yeah.
I'm hoping to get another roommate just as awesome as Sylvia.
Aww. I saw that they're. Yeah, I missed that, Sylvia. Sorry.
Oh, I just said I wish I could go in April so I could be roomies with Suzanne again.
Aw.
Go.
I wish we could all go together again.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Where some of us met. I saw that they have a budget-friendly one that they're doing next year at like a camp. Did you guys see that? They're doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where?
It's on the website. I can't remember. I looked at it a while ago, but it's on.
Yeah, I don't remember. Is it still in Tennessee?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Maybe it's Washington. I can't remember, but it's in.
I did.
For camp. That's so fun.
I am on the list for one in 2020. It might be in a February one. I don't remember. It wasn't the budget-friendly one, because the idea of camp for me is like, is that a Holiday Inn? I mean.
Vanessa, maybe you can convince Tom to do an immersive in Vancouver.
Yeah. I talked to him about it, and I talked to him about it. But he is coming to Vancouver 2020, right? So.
Oh, cool.
July
You have to
2020.
convince Keith. That's you just
Exactly.
go straight to Keith, man.
That's who I talked to.
Yeah.
So.
I'll come to Vancouver in July of 2020.
Yeah, cool. Come, guys.
Come on up.
Stay with us.
Yeah.
Awesome. Would love to have you guys. Thank you. I appreciate you all. I appreciate the space, the platform that keeps me accountable. Like Suzanne, sometimes I'm like, oh, I got to read the book. But then when I actually sit down and I read it, I'm filled with appreciation, because it really helps pull me out of my little picture that I sometimes get stuck into, right?
Yeah.
It opens me up, and I have such a bigger understanding. And I'm like, why was I stressing over this little thing? I mean, look at the big picture. It's so insignificant. So it helps me a lot. I just love this. I look forward to it every Saturday morning. I'm grateful. You guys teach me a lot. I learn a lot about myself and about the larger consciousness system, the nature of reality. Thank you guys. I look forward to, what are we doing? We finishing off book 1, I guess, eh?
I think we should. There's only 2 chapters, I think, 2 or 3 chapters.
Yeah, small chapters, 274 to 288. Yeah, it's like 15 pages. So.
Well, are we doing the synopsis? No, that goes into book 2. Never mind. There's like a 1-page synopsis of book 1, but I don't know.
Is that chapter 35?
It doesn't seem to have a chapter number. It's just
You have the big book. Yeah.
I have the big book.
So the little book ends on 34.
I don't think we have that. Do we have that, Daniel?
No.
Could you take a picture of the synopsis and maybe
Yeah.
That would be so helpful.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's one page, but I can do that.
Yeah, 32, 33, 34.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Okay, guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good week, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.